I was at one of the lowest points of my life at the end of 2020, and the content that I'm about to share with you helped me pull myself together to have one of the best years of my life in 2021.
Everything you need to easily pass English ATAR. English ATAR made simple. Powered by Saints Coaching.
Goals and habits. What goals do you have? Have you written them down? Are they smart? This lesson is about goals and habits and how you need them to achieve any project. And when I say project, I mean anything that you want to work on for a sustained period of time. In the context of English ATAR made simple, it would be to work on and get better at English ATAR. That would be a project. Okay, what are we going to do in the lesson? Firstly, understand the importance of goal setting. Then define what a goal is. After that, outline the criteria for effective goal setting. Then we will understand the importance of habits, define what a habit is, discuss the interplay between goals and habits, then explain the power of implementation intentions. After that, describe the utility or the usefulness of habit tracking, and then identify how long it typically takes to reach automaticity. Then we will illustrate the information on goals and habits and how that will be used in this course. After that, provide an example of a completed goal and habit contract. Firstly, goals. A definition, nice way to start things off. A goal is 1 to 2 sentences that clearly define something that you want to achieve. An emphasis on the 1 to 2 sentences part. If the goal is really long, it's hard to bear in mind, it's hard to remember, and if you can't remember a goal, how can you work towards achieving? Criteria for effective goal setting. The most important thing about goal setting is that it needs to be smart. And when I say smart, I don't mean the opposite of dumb. We definitely don't want dumb goals, but this is an acronym. If you've done PE studies, you've probably come across this acronym of SMART. I am not going to try and reinvent the wheel here. It's worked for me. You might not have implemented it yourself beyond just learning about it in theory at school, but it does work for a reason. And there are different versions of it. You hear smarter, but I'm just going to try and keep it simple because that's what we do in this course with the acronym SMART. What does it mean? Firstly, the S is specific, and that means you know exactly what you're working towards. Then the M is measurable, and it means that you can easily determine whether you've achieved the goal. Then achievable means you can actually complete the goal. After that, relevant, it applies to your current circumstances. And the T means it's time bound. You have a deadline to work towards and can prioritize accordingly. The goal is something that has an end date. For instance, when people set a New Year's resolution, the implied deadline is by the end of the year. Let's apply what we've just learned about SMART goals with an example. The example we're going to talk about is going to relate to Timmy. This is Timmy. Timmy is a Year 12 student who's currently averaging 45% in English ATAR. And when Timmy's mum asks him what his goal is, Timmy says, pass English. Is this a SMART goal? My question for you. Let's have a look. Is it specific? I don't think it is. Does Timmy want to pass his English assessment, or does he want to pass the English exam, or does he want to pass the whole subject? Also, does Timmy want to get 50% on the dot, or does he want to pass more comfortably with, say, a mark of 58%? All he said in his goal to his mum was, I just want to pass. So here doesn't meet the criterion of being specific because 1, it doesn't specify the mark that he wants to achieve, and 2, it doesn't specify which part of English he wants to pass. Does he want his school mark to be a pass? Does he want the whole mark to be a pass? Does he want his WACE exam mark to be a pass? It might be implied, but if it isn't specifically stated, there's room for you in your head to make excuses for not working towards the goal. There's ambiguity. There's this element of the unknown. Measurable. I think Timmy's goal is measurable to an extent because we know that if he gets 50% or higher, he's achieved the goal. Achievable, considering Timmy is 5% away from a passing mark, we could say Timmy's goal is achievable. He wants to go from 45% to pass English, which is at least 50, 5% difference, definitely achievable. Relevant, I'd say it is relevant because it relates to whether or not he has to do the special tertiary admissions test before going to uni. He's in Year 12. This goal is very relevant to what's going on in his life. An example of an irrelevant goal, if Timmy wanted to blow vape out of his nostrils while riding a pogo stick. Probably not the most relevant for some of his other priorities he's got going on. Lastly, time bound. Although Timmy probably wants to pass English once he's finished the WACE exam, the goal just does not make this clear enough. His goal was, I just want to pass English, but it isn't specific enough. If he wants to pass English for a school mark, then that deadline might be October. If he wants to pass English in his WACE exam, that deadline might be in November. If he wants to pass English overall, that deadline might be in December when he gets his ATAR report. Because this goal is not specific and it's not time-bound, we can conclude that Timmy's goal is MA. This is Timmy's mum's reaction to a MA goal. We don't want a MA goal, we want a SMART goal. Why does it matter that Timmy makes it specific and time-bound? If Timmy hasn't written down the specifics of the goal and when it must be achieved, it won't be crystal clear in his mind. And it gives Timmy excuses not to hold himself fully accountable towards achieving it. For instance, we know Timmy's goal is to pass English, and let's say it's the end of the year, and his parents ask him, what happened? You got 48%. You didn't pass. Timmy could say in response to that, Mum and Dad, my goal was to pass English. My goal was to pass English for my school mark. And I actually did that, so I actually achieved my goal. Go me, it doesn't count that I failed the WACE exam and ended up on 48%. Talk about a fixed mindset. That was an example of what not to do. After discussing the above with Timmy, here is his updated goal. It's May, and my current average in English ATAR is 45%. My goal is to achieve a scaled English ATAR score of 58% on my ATAR report. Is this a SMART goal? It's specific, the precise percentage is stated, and we know that Timmy wants his final English ATAR score to be 58% because of the words scaled score. It's measurable because Timmy's ATAR report will state whether he gets 58% or not. And obviously, if he gets higher than 58%, that's just an added bonus. But 58% gives a bit of a buffer there. And that kind of leads to our next criterion, which is achievable. It's achievable for a couple of reasons. Firstly, he sets the goal in May. The WACE exam is at the beginning of November, so that gives him at least 5 months to bump up the mark. Secondly, as we know, school-based marks, 50%, WACE exam, 50%. Even if his school-based mark is not looking that great, the WACE exam can still make up a huge difference and really help him bump up that mark by 13%. Is it relevant? I'd say it is, because passing English ATAR means Timmy doesn't have to do the stat. Unlike Timmy's original goal, this one is time-bound because he wants 58% on his ATAR report, which implies that Timmy has until the beginning of November, when the WACE exam is, to work at it, because beginning of November, the WACE exam is his final chance to achieve the goal. That is goal setting done the right way. Now let's take a look at habits and see how they relate to goals. Whether or not you're aware of it, you follow several habits each day, maybe even hundreds. You might go on your phone and watch TikToks when your morning alarm goes off. That's a habit. You might brush your teeth after you eat brekkie. That's also a habit. You might watch an episode of Rick and Morty after you finish your homework for the day. That's a pretty good habit. This part of the lesson is going to explain what habits are and how you can use them to achieve your English ATAR related goal. Much of the information that I will be sharing with you now comes from this book called Atomic Habits, written by James Clear. This is probably the best book I've ever read. It completely changed my life and it completely changed the way I go about everything in my life. I read books on the Kindle app on my phone because it's always on me and it's easy to pull out at a moment's notice. And I also love the Kindle app because my highlights get sent to my Notion page and I've got this summary of the book that I've read. That's a whole other can of worms. Very passionate about that stuff. Point being, I rarely actually buy a hardback or paperback of a book that I've already read, unless I absolutely love it, and Atomic Habits is an example of that. Right here. If you haven't read it, obviously I highly recommend it, but if reading isn't for you right now at this stage of life, I also get that. I hated reading in year 12. I only started reading halfway through 2021. So maybe just flag it, bookmark it in your brain for a time later in life, but it is definitely highly recommended. Definition of a habit: it's a regular practice that's hard to give up. What you might have noticed about that definition is that it is very neutral. It doesn't say that a habit is good or bad, and that is because they're not one or the other. They can be both. An example of a good habit would be what you're doing now, watching English ATAR Made Simple. An example of a bad habit would be smoking. As we saw in the definition, habits are hard to give up. Why is that the case? Over time, a habit becomes so ingrained in your schedule that instead of making a conscious effort to do it, you just do it. Think about that habit of watching TikToks first thing in the morning. Do you have to force yourself to do that? I'm guessing the answer is no. We've learnt about goals. We've learnt about habits. How do they relate? A very good question, and here's the answer. Goals focus on the what. Habits focus on the how. What does that mean? Let's return to Timmy's SMART goal of achieving 58% on his English ATAR report. As we've already established, it's a great goal. And that goal is an example of the what. That is what he is trying to achieve. But does it state anything about how Timmy will actually achieve it? This is where habits come in. If Timmy simply just created his goal, which as we know he did in May, and then changed nothing about how he studied for English ATAR, his marks won't change. Nothing will happen. It's unlikely that he will achieve his goal, especially if it involves him going up from 45 to 58. You can't do that if you don't change anything about what you've been doing. This is one of the most important things that I can stress in this course. You won't improve your English ATAR mark unless you're prepared to change what you've been doing. There's a quote that's misattributed to Einstein, and it goes something like, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing every day and expecting different results. That's really what this key takeaway is getting at. Here's one scenario. You are not prepared to change your current approach to studying for English ATAR, and your marks don't improve. Surprise, this is a fixed mindset. On the other hand, you are prepared to change your current approach to studying for English ATAR, and then therefore, your marks will improve, and that is obviously a growth mindset. Moving on to the power of implementation intentions. You might be thinking, okay, nice to know what a habit is, but what habit should I create? How do I create a habit? Enter implementation intentions. Definition. An implementation intention is a sentence that clearly indicates how you intend to implement a habit by detailing the day or days, the time, and the place that you'll complete it. Here is a formula. I'm a sucker for formulas. You'll find lots of formulas throughout this course. As we can see, an implementation intention is on, day, at, time, I will, habit, in, location. Okay, before we get to an example, why even bother with implementation intentions? Why even discuss them in this lesson? You are 2 to 3 times more likely to follow through with a habit if you set an implementation intention. What does that mean? It means that an implementation intention, if you set one and then use it, follow it, you will be 2 to 3 times more likely to achieve your English ATAR goal. That is how powerful these things are. An example of an implementation intention that I use, I put in my calendar the days that I will gym and the times at which I will gym. I've got a home gym. I don't really need to do that. It's not like there are different times of the day where I could go and it's less busy or not. It's just all to myself and my housemate. But the point being, because I know it's in my calendar and because I've put it in there, I've made that commitment to myself that I will go there at that time and do the thing. An example of my implementation intention is, we go back to our formula, on, for instance, Monday at 7:15 a.m., I will gym in home gym. That was a non-English ATAR example. Let's go back to Timmy. Timmy's happy with his updated goal, but he wants to keep himself accountable, so he creates the following implementation intention. On Monday, Wednesday, and Sunday at 5 p.m., I will complete one lesson of English ATAR Made Simple at Reed Library. If you don't live in Perth, Reed Library is the library at UWA, but you get the idea here. You can change around all of these different factors to suit your own personal circumstances. That is all I wanted to say about implementation intentions. What about the utility of habit tracking, the usefulness of it? As always, the definition first. A habit tracker is a simple way to measure whether you did a habit. Before we look at what a habit tracker looks like, I want to read out this small excerpt from the book, Atomic Habits. It illustrates how useful habit tracking is. And I quote, Jerry Seinfeld reportedly uses a habit tracker to stick with his streak of writing jokes. In the documentary Comedian, he explains that his goal is simply to never break the chain of writing jokes every day. In other words, he is not focused on how good or bad a particular joke is or how inspired he feels. He is simply focusing on showing up and adding to his chain. Don't break the chain is a powerful mantra. And that was from pages 196 to 197. Now that Timmy has his goal and his implementation intention, he's motivated to start his English ATAR Made Simple journey. Timmy knows how useful habit tracking can be to make the continued performance of a habit satisfying, so he starts using a habit tracker. This is what Timmy's habit tracker looks like after 4 weeks. In this example, we can see that Timmy's chain is vertical. Those vertical strikes going down on Monday, Wednesday, and Sunday. Really, when you think about it, growing the chain, as Seinfeld likes to call it, is satisfying for the same reason that we engage in streaks on various apps. Example for me, I've got an 820-day streak on Headspace. I don't say that to toot my own horn. I just need it because my ADHD brain doesn't otherwise get a chance to just chill out. And the point that I'm trying to illustrate, because I'm by no means some Zen master, is, in all honesty, the reason why I show up each day is because I don't want to lose that streak. That is the utility, that is the usefulness of habit tracking. And that brings me to a really important point. The likelihood of achieving your goal increases as you grow the chain. For Timmy, as he grows his chain in the habit tracker, he will get closer and closer to achieving his goal of getting 58% in English on his ATAR report. Now let's talk about automating habits, reaching automaticity. Probably said that 50 times off camera before I got that. What on earth does automaticity mean? Here's our definition. It's the ability to perform a behavior without thinking about each step. And this is a graphical representation of where automaticity is reached. And by the way, this is another excerpt from Atomic Habits. This graph comes from Atomic Habits. In the beginning, point A habit requires a good deal of effort and concentration to perform. After a few repetitions, point B, it gets easier but still requires some conscious effort. And with enough practice, which is point C, the habit becomes more automatic than conscious. It becomes subconscious. Beyond the threshold, as you can see, the habit line, the behavior can be done more or less without thinking. And that means a new habit has been formed. You might be wondering, how long does it take to cross the habit line? How long does it take for a habit to become automatic? How long does it take for me to reach automaticity? Forming a habit is not about how long, but really how many. So you shouldn't ask yourself how long, you should be asking yourself how many. With that in mind, let's compare the following two scenarios that Timmy could find himself in. Scenario A. Timmy has performed his habit of completing one lesson of English ATAR 3 times over the past 3 weeks. He's broken the chain 6 times. To make that clearer, he said that he will watch and complete 3 lessons of English ATAR each week. And if it's been 3 weeks, 3 times 3, it means he should have watched and completed 9 lessons. But here, he's only watched and completed 3, which means that he's missed out on 6, which means that he's broken the chain 6 times. At this rate, it would probably take Timmy 6 months to cross the habit line. Alternatively, scenario B, Timmy has performed his habit of completing 1 lesson of English ATAR Made Simple 9 times over the past 3 weeks, meaning he hasn't broken the chain once. At this rate, Timmy would probably cross the habit line in a week or 2. So you see here, in both scenarios, it's been 3 weeks, but Timmy will reach the habit line, cross the habit line, so much quicker in scenario B because he's not breaking the chain. That brings me to another key takeaway. Focus on the quality of repetitions rather than the length of time. I really cannot stress enough the importance of just showing up, get into that Jerry Seinfeld mentality of just sitting down at your desk and doing something, just starting. There's usually that 10 to 15 minutes of resistance. Trust me, I know. After you get into the groove and after you continue doing that with enough reps, it will just become automatic. How will this information on goals and habits be used in English ATAR Made Simple? The short and sweet answer is by creating a goal and habit contract. What is a goal and habit contract? It is a written agreement in which you state your commitment to a particular goal and habit and the punishment that will occur if you don't follow through. Before you let the word punishment overwhelm you, I want to note a few things. You get to choose the consequence of not following through with your goal and habit contract. And by choosing your own penalty, punishment, consequence, whatever you want to call it, you're keeping yourself accountable. However, if you're the only person who's monitoring your compliance with the goal and habit contract, you'll be less likely to enforce that punishment if you don't comply with the contract. Enter accountability partners. An accountability partner is really exactly what it sounds like. It's another person that will keep you accountable for following through with your goal and habit contract and then enforce the punishment if you don't follow through with the goal and habit contract. Here are some potential accountability partner ideas. Sibling, parent, mate, someone else enrolled in English ATAR Made Simple that you've met in the community. Dog, probably not a dog. I've made a big deal about goal and habit contracts, but what does one actually look like? What does it include? What are the elements? Element 1 states what the goal is. Element 2, it explains why the goal is smart. Element 3 states what your habit is using the implementation intention formula. It explains what the consequences of non-compliance is. It explains what the punishment is. It states who your accountability partner is. It explains how and when you'll report to your accountability partner. Includes you and your accountability partner's respective signatures. This makes it legit, makes it an official thing. Obviously, it's not some legally enforceable binding document, but whenever you write your signature on something, you do feel the sense of commitment to what you've just put it on. And it includes a printable and reusable habit tracker template. Those are the elements of a goal and habit contract. Let's see what an example of one looks like. And if you've looked at the study notes for this lesson, you'll see this completed goal and habit contract towards the end. What we're about to look at are just screenshots of those various sections based on the elements that we just went through. First element states what the goal is. My example is, my goal in English ATAR this year is to go from my current average of 45% to a scaled English ATAR score of 58% on my ATAR report. Basically, it's what Timmy's goal was. It explains why the goal was smart. It is specific because the precise percentage is stated. It's measurable because my ATAR report will state whether I get 58%. Delivering a course on English ATAR, still escape the typos. Please excuse that double weather. It's achievable because I've got approximately 6 months to improve and the WACE exam constitutes 50% of my overall mark. It's relevant because passing English ATAR means I won't have to do the stat. And it's time bound because the WACE exam is in November. Next element states what your habit is using the implementation intention formula. The example, my habit in English ATAR this year is on Monday, Wednesday, and Sunday, the days, at 5 p.m, the time, I will complete one lesson of English ATAR made simple, that's the habit, at Read Library, that's the place. Element 4, it explains what the consequence of non-compliance is. Remember, you get to choose this. The example is the consequence of non-compliance is I have to delete the TikTok and Instagram apps from my phone. Interpret that as you will. Element 5 states who your accountability partner is. My accountability partner is my dad, Patrick. Element 6, it explains how and when I'll report to my accountability partner. We can see I will report to my accountability partner by doing the following. Showing my dad that I have 1, watched the 3 lessons of English ATAR made simple, and 2, completed the relevant activities for each lesson. Then I will report to my accountability partner by the following time. And here I put 9 p.m. each Sunday night. For me and my goal and habit contract, the time of 9 p.m. each Sunday night makes sense because my habit says that I will complete lessons on Monday, Wednesday or Thursday, can't remember, Monday, middle day, and Sunday. So as I complete the lesson on Sunday, that gives me a chance to show my dad at the end of the day that I have done that week's work. Element 7, it includes you and your accountability partner's respective signatures. Lastly, element 8, it includes a printable, reusable habit tracker template. You would have seen in the workbook that there are blank versions of this, and it's just 2 pages, so I highly recommend that you print them off and put them somewhere that is on display. And I think I've mentioned some possible ideas for that in the study notes. That is everything for the lesson on goals and habits. Make sure you go and complete the activity, which is to complete the goal and habit contract, and I am looking forward to seeing you in the next lesson. Until then, keep it simple.